Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My guests tonight are the brains and creative behind one of the most popular and funny games of the year, High on Life, and its recently released DLC, High on Knife. Joining us, we have the CEO and studio director of Squanch Games, Mike Fridley, a man who started as a designer and QA tester at Bethesda, where he worked on titles such as The Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and Shadow Complex. Also joining us tonight is the CCO and art director of Squanch, Mikey Spano, who's been making art for video games since he was 18 years old. He has worked for Ubisoft, Epic Games, and Bitmonster, and has contributed to games such as Gears of War, Unreal Tournament, and Fortnite. They're here to talk all about their latest project, their creative processes, and maybe tease a little something in the future plans. So, without further ado, please welcome to the show, Mike Fridley and Mikey Spano. All right, guys, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, we're sitting down with Mikey Spano, the art director there at Squanch Games, and Mike Fridley. We're going to call him Fridley. He's the CEO, the big boss man himself at Squanch Games. And we're going to be talking all things about Squanch Games and obviously High on Life and High on Knife, the DLC for it, which is an incredible game. So first and foremost, I always want to do my due diligence. For each of you guys, what, if any, is your connection to the military?
I can start. My grandpa on my dad's side was a tank gunner, and he was in the military. He was a career military guy, and he fought in Korean War, trained other tank gunners. I think he spent some time doing some work in Vietnam. But I come from a military family until my dad went and got into the tech industry. So that's kind of where the connection stopped.
Outstanding.
And for me, I had several family members in the military. My grandfather, my mom's side, was a rear admiral in the Navy. I've just kind of always been around military folks. I've worked on some military games that allowed me to connect with other folks. Like I worked on a game when I was at Bethesda called Rogue Warrior that was Richard Marcinko. I'm sure you're familiar with Marcinko and all his books. And I got to pal around with former and current SEALs for about a year, following them around and doing like live fire exercises in the desert and in Vegas and stuff. So I've been around it a bit off and on in my career, and it's always been fun.
Oh, outstanding. Well, we thank your family for their service, and we thank you guys for joining us tonight and talking with our folks. So first and foremost, man, before we get into the work of it, I always like to get to know the person behind it. So obviously we're big on pop culture here, movies, TV, games, all the things. What do you guys geek out on outside of your career field? Like what do you do to decompress? Is it music? Is it movies? Like what's your go-to geek thing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I play a lot of games, watch movies. Like that's a given at this point. I do love like old horror movies, like 80s kind of horror movies. I love old 80s, early 90s toys. I collect a bunch of toys. I also just draw all the time, like just weird stuff. I usually just sit around my house, I'll get baked and just start drawing weird stuff. I'm definitely one of those people that has to stay constantly occupied, and my whole life is just geek shit. So it's pretty much anything. I'm into pretty much everything.
Yeah, Mikey is like really eclectic. Like he's all over the place. Like a ton of different interests. Like I feel like you could probably fill the hour just walking around Mikey's house. And
yeah,
all the weird stuff that he's into. I'm not into a ton of like I'm an amateur drummer. I've been teaching myself how to drum now that we're working from home and I don't have neighbors to annoy. So I've been teaching myself to drum, and that's been taking a lot. And then it's mostly just gaming on our side. And I used to be a big car guy, and I sold my Challenger and kind of got out of that when we moved back to Virginia. So maybe I'll get back into that. I don't know. I want to restore an old Bronco. Like I like the new Broncos, but I want to restore an old Bronco. So maybe I'll convert one of the bays here to a hydraulic lift and start getting to work on that soon.
Nice. Okay, and so obviously you guys are about as in the gaming industry as you can possibly be. What are games that you enjoy playing on your spare time, right? From other studios, and then just kind of games that maybe inspired or influenced your career in some way.
I was always a big RPG guy. Like I was always big into RPGs, and I started at Bethesda and worked on some RPGs there that people are familiar with, but I've always been kind of into games that had it didn't necessarily need to be fantasy RPGs, but had some kind of persistent progression where it wasn't just like play a game and then get a score and then you're happy. It was like play a game. I felt like I've made some progress. So the next time I play the game, I'm making a little bit more progress. So it becomes like this thing where I know I'm still wasting my time playing video games, but it feels like less of a waste of time if I come out with like a level 50 character at the other end that nobody but me cares about. But yeah, that is pretty much my bread and butter is shooters and RPGs is kind of the sweet spot.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. Just replace RPGs with sci-fi. I love any sci-fi first-person shooter. Like Halo still is one of my top franchises of all time. I've probably put in thousands of hours into Destiny and Destiny 2 at this point.
Yeah, I played Destiny 2 with Mikey.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We tried to run around high as shit playing Destiny 2.
Yeah, that's always the problem with Destiny is like I'll do raids with friends, and like when I game, I like to relax, if you know what I mean. And the raids get super complicated, and my friends start to get mad, and they're just like, "Stop fucking around! We got to do this thing." And I'm usually just like super baked, just laughing at everything, So Destiny kind of fell off recently for me, but prior to that, it was years and years of playing that a lot. I also just play a lot of like random indie games, multiplayer games with my kids who are adults, not kids. I've got a 19-year-old and an 18-year-old, so
oh wow,
it's I guess she'll be 18 soon. But yeah, so lots of like split screen couch co-op kind of stuff.
no, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm curious because from an industry insider perspective, right? Because like I grew up loving magic, right? So I read all the books and I, actual practical magic, not like Magic the Gathering. Well, I did that too, but practical magic. So like if I watch someone doing magic and I'm like, okay, is he using this technique or so when you guys sit there and play games, is it hard to turn that part of yourself off where you're like, I would have chose a different color scheme, or I didn't like the way this is set up? Is it hard to turn it off?
100%. Sometimes like I think early I don't know about Mikey, but early in my career I was a lot more critical than I am now, because I've worked with so many different creators and so many different studios, and like it's really hard for me to yuck somebody else's yum. Like they like this, so it's like, okay, that's not what I would have done if I was involved in the design of this, or I was involved in the production of this. But I see why somebody else would like that. So there's oftentimes that we find bugs that a lot of people don't see, because we're like, oh, this is probably where this is going to break. If I was doing the logic of this quest, this is probably where it would break, and it does. So like that kind of stuff is hard. Like Mikey, you talk about. I'm sure that Mikey has a lot more problems with games than I do, as far as like the visual glitches here and there, because I don't see any of that shit. Like we'll be working on our games, and Mikey will be like, "This looks horrible," but I'm like, "This looks amazing to me. I don't understand what you're seeing." And then he'll like zoom in and like point red lines at it and shit. I'm like, okay, yeah, that does look fucked up. But like, I didn't notice it because I'm not an artist. So go ahead, Mikey. Yeah.
Oh, there goes the legendary freeze that we were talking about. It's great. It's part of Fridley's allure at this point. But anyway, yeah. So for me, 100%, I'm constantly like getting distracted by different choices developers have made, or like, stretch textures or weird bugs or whatever. I've definitely lightened up about how that makes me feel now. I try to just go like, yeah, I get it. People run out of time, and, putting out bigger fires is way more important. So I've definitely grown a bit, but it does get really distracting for me, especially when I have like my girlfriend sitting next to me, and I'll be like, did you see that? And then I'll start to explain why it's all broken. Completely.
We're pretty good about it though. Like we have like our executive team here at Squanch, like we will shit on a game for like the first day that it's out.
Yeah.
And then after that, we're like, well, did you see how they did this in the UI? That's pretty cool. And like, we'll like pick parts of it that are great. You know, we can find something good in anything. But it's some games are tough not to rag on a little bit. Like the state of games that have been launching recently in the last 5 years. Whew, it's hard to give some of them a pass out the gate. You're like, man, it's kind of a disgrace to the industry a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's where it bumps most with me is like big AAA games with all this funding and hype and stuff. And then for them to come out and sort of get a pass on a lot of stuff or just, you know, end up selling 1 billion copies despite horrible launches. That kind of stuff always makes me upset, but it's really just coming from a place of jealousy. I'm like, I want infinite time. I want infinite money.
I want to ship a turd and still sell millions of copies.
Right. So that's really where it gets in the way. But outside of that, it's like whatever. It's just par for the course.
Yeah, I think back, you know, I think to like when I'm watching military movies and things like that, and you're like, that's not how you're supposed to do it, and and uniforms all jacked up and shit like that. So I totally appreciate where you guys are coming from. So give us, if you can, maybe just a bit of your background before the gaming industry, right? Because this is something where I'm like, I grew up playing video games. Like, I didn't know that was a career path. I didn't know that was a choice. They told me you'll go nowhere playing video games. So give us a little bit about the background prior to games.
I think Mikey and I probably came in the industry around the same time, and the industry was definitely a bit different in the late 90s, early aughts. And how you got in it was a lot different. There was no such thing as video games in curriculum in any schools. There was no specific colleges for any kind of video game production in any way. So, and there's tons of that now. So it was a much less formal process back then. I mean, I literally got into making video games. I graduated with a BA in American history, which is probably the smallest job opportunity list in the world. It's like, I could be a teacher or a historian, and like both of those, I wasn't really that interested in. And I saw an ad for, do you want to play video games and make money on one of those like before the movie slide things? I was like, I like video games. So it ended up being an outsourced QA house for Hasbro. And I went and just became a tester playing games and reporting bugs. And that's how I kind of got my foot in the door and figured out like, oh, I really like doing this, but it doesn't pay well at all. I don't know if I can actually do this. And it was 5-6 years before I actually made a living wage at it. It was like, okay, I can actually continue to work at this. But it's, you know, it's a lot different now. Like you have to come in, you have to have, you know, student projects that you could show off. You have to have a resume of stuff that you've worked on and some kind of formal training to even be considered now. Like I would have been laughed out of the room when I was first applying back at Bethesda with my experience, but it's a lot more formalized now.
Yeah, you need a thesis and a dissertation on the history of game.
Cover letter, and like it'd be great if you send us your Xbox achievement rank.
Yes. How many gold, platinum trophies you have, the whole thing. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's brutal now to get in for sure. Yeah, it's tough.
What about you, Mikey? What's your background?
So my background is pretty short. Like Fridley said, I got in 2000. So the year I graduated high school, basically, I skipped college and I got a job at Ubisoft working on what was the first thing I worked on was Sum of All Fears, which was based on like a Tom Clancy movie. And then I worked on a bunch of Ghost Recon stuff, a lot of Rainbow Six games. I did that for like 5 years, but yeah, prior to that, just high school, I was just like always wanted to make video games since I was a little kid. And so I went to school and did all my normal stuff. And then I would go home from school and work on my really crappy computer. My dad has PhD in robotics. So he was always bringing home like new technology. So I had access to like more powerful computers than some of my other people I knew. And so I just got really nerdy into computers and pirating 3D software, early shitty 3D software. And just kind of built up a skill set. So I just kind of showed up at Ubisoft, I did tech support for a few months and just stuck like a portfolio on the art director's desk. And then, he called me in and, asked what I could do. And I was like, I'll just remake one of the levels. I think it was from Rogue Spear. It was like the Met museum in there. I don't know. I'm sure a bunch of the listeners have played lots of Rainbow Six and Ghost Recon. So I basically remade that level and showed him, and he was like, all right, cool, you're hired. And so that was 23 years ago now, which is crazy. But yeah, it's been a while.
Wow, that's it. It's incredible to me because, I think back to that time and like, oh, if you're going to make a game, I think it was like Mojang when they made Minecraft, right? It's like one guy sitting in a room. He's going to do the art, the pixels. He's going to do the coding. He's going to do and now you can specialize in something, right? Whether it's art, whether it's character design, whether it's writing, storyboarding, whatever it is, you can specialize in that thing and work for gaming, which I think is so incredible, and makes our games better. I think is when you can bring those specialists in there.
I think the specialization is like newer too. Most of the old school people in the industry are used to kind of doing everything. Especially there was like a little indie boom too between stuff. Like after I left Epic, I started an indie company and we all just did everything. So it's really useful to have still, but yeah, it's definitely gotten a lot more specialized and harder to sort of get lots of different work from a single person.
I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing. Like I'm gonna disagree with Mikey. Mikey and I disagree often.
How dare you?
Yeah.
I'm usually right. So, but I miss the days where people could do multiple things. Like I miss those days. Like at Bethesda, we had just had world builders. There weren't environment artists and level designers, but you're a world builder. Like you just built the world with the assets that you had. You designed the quest. You laid out the NPCs. You did everything that was part of that world. And I think now we get into this kind of false understanding that specialized equals better. It's like if I get somebody that's specialized in just doing lighting in a level, then I'm going to get better lighting than I would if an environment artist that was also building the level did the lighting. And I think that's a contributor to why you see these AAA budgets going so big. Like we shipped High on Life with under 50 people, and less than 2 years of development. So we went from, and fully remote, by the way, too. We didn't have a first playable until after the pandemic started. So we had gone fully remote with under 50 people, made that game, and I would put it up there with a lot of AAA games that came out that year. It was,
Absolutely.
We were the best launch of any third party game on Game Pass ever. And it didn't cost us $150 million to make that game. I can tell you that right now. Like the idea that specialized, there's definitely places for it. And Mikey's probably thinking of 10 of those right now.
I definitely don't think specialization is the right thing. I think
great. So, but like I think that is like what is inflating budgets the most. It's like, you look at the credits of it, it's like, there's 300 people that worked on this game, and yes, half of them may be outsourcers or contractors, but holy cow, man, like that's a lot of people. Like we were barely over 100 people on Morrowind, like Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, and that game was massive. And I don't see the quality of games now reflecting the 3x, 4x budgets of 10 years ago. I don't see the direct correlation there.
Yeah. So if you got 6 people designing a chair that the player passes for half a second and
it's an awesome chair. It's fucking sweet. Like if you screenshot that motherfucker, it's like a badass chair, right? You're like,
best chair ever. Game of the year.
The light reflects off of it. It's got fucking particle effects and everything. It's like, yeah, but who gives a shit? It's a chair. Like, just don't worry about the shit that doesn't matter. Like, focus on the stuff that matters. Like, that's a much smaller bite to take. Like we can increase the quality of the main path. We can increase the quality of what people are going to see the most. That's where we dump all of our money and effort.
Right.
Like the stuff that's kind of the outliers. Like you can't, unless you're going to hope to sell 50 million copies of the game. Like I don't see how people are recouping these massive development budgets and able to stay. And they're not. Like you see all the layoffs. You see a lot of projects getting cut, even at big publishers. You see, a lot of studio closings. It's because they bit off more than they can chew every time, and we do it all the time. We've done it since I've started in the industry. You hire up, take on too big of projects that are scoped too high, and then wonder why it didn't work out when it comes to the end.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely the state of the industry is a little funky right about now.
It's always been funky though. Like we've always done this. Like, and I'm including myself in it too. Like we've always done because that's who we are really at the core. Is we always want more.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mikey will tell you this. No artist is ever happy that the game shipped.
Yes.
Like there's always man, if I just had another week, I could make this chair fucking awesome, right? Like I could really blow out this whole diner. Like it would be awesome. And you're like, yeah, but it's really good right now. We just need to ship. But that's just how we are. We always want it to be a little bit better. We're never happy with like, oh, that looks great, and I'm happy that that's going to go out to the public. We're always a little bit unhappy with it when it goes out the door.
Yeah. Yeah, I always think like if you're unhappy, it means that you have growth potential, right? So it's like if you're really happy with the last thing you did and you think you did it perfect, you're stalling out. So
or you're kidding yourself.
Yeah. Like as a creative, it's tough to ever say this is good enough because most creatives will just want to keep growing and getting better. And so it's sort of like I think a lot of people hear it as a sort of negative defeatist thing, but I always see it as like a desire for growth that people are just bad at articulating, and I think the end result is always just better art, better writing, better everything. If you're always, unsatisfied with the quality of it.
Yeah. And that's kind of how we drive. That's how Mikey drives the creative here. That's how I drive the business decisions on the business side we're always creative first and we're always quality first. Like we pushed the game 2 months because we weren't happy with one section of it.
Right.
We'll cut a month's worth of work out if the joke doesn't land. Like if like this bit isn't working, like we thought it was hilarious and it just doesn't work, we just remove it. So you can try to force it to work multiple times and try to force, crowbar that joke in that you really think was great. But at the end of the day, if everybody's telling you that it doesn't land, it doesn't land. So, we're very much like Mikey and Eric Meyer, our CDO, they're very much in control of how acceptable we find the game and like the quality level of the game and what pushes the studio. Like we're very results driven, not schedule driven.
Yeah.
We're not regimented around a schedule. It's like, okay, this is the next thing that we need to have. That's awesome. This is when we want it by, we're going to review it here and then get to that point however you can. Like, we're not going to tell you exactly, like you're a senior character artist. We're not going to tell you that it should take you 5 days to do the low poly of this. We're going to tell you that here's when it needs to be done. It needs to be awesome. And the guy needs to kind of look like this. And then we're going to let people that are good at what they do it. And just reward them when it's awesome. Like, and that's kind of how we drive the whole process here.
And that's got to be, I mean, it seems from an outsider, right? I'm a complete noob here. From an outsider's perspective, it seems so counter to what the rest of the industry is kind of pushing for, where they're like, hey, in March, we're releasing come hell or high water. And then they release this product that's, it needed to be baked a little more. It needed a little more time.
Yeah. I mean, there's some stuff there that it's a gray area because there are certain things you just don't see until it's in the wild. Like no matter how much QA you throw at it, you're going to miss stuff that you couldn't see until 1 million people were playing it. But launching the game properly, that should always work. Like some of the stuff that we see coming out now is just like, oh wow, they can't even connect to servers. So the launch button doesn't work, or the executable blue screens. Like there's like basic stuff that isn't being covered now. So there's a bit of difference between that and what we're talking about. But
yeah, I want to know why when I load in, I don't have a fucking gun in my hand. That's a problem. If you are a shooter, that seems to be kind of important. Sorry, that's just personal. Oh, I think
the bigger the company and the bigger the marketing spend, the more you really have to hit the dates that you say you're going to hit. It's like the tricky thing about making big games is like if you say we're coming out at this time, and then you spend all this money on marketing, and marketing is so finicky, like people forget so quickly that you even exist. So if you don't capitalize on like this exact algorithm that someone's figured out of like market at this point, and then you do this, and then this, and then this, and then if you miss that last step, like you've kind of fucked it all up. So it's very much like a gamble of is the game good enough that players are going to forgive some of the flaws, or are we totally fucked and we spent a bunch of money putting attention on something that sucks, right? Like, and I think like, you know, Redfall, I love the developers of that, but they kind of ran into the latter issue where it's like it was out of their hands, you know, like as a development studio, I'm sure they wanted the game to be a lot better than it was, but the marketing pushed it to a certain point, and then people at the top who don't necessarily understand like what quality looks like in a game are going to push it out no matter what and be like, it's fine. This is what our Q1 forecast is supposed to be. So it has to be this, you know? And I think that's something the industry is learning right now is these huge budget games. If you don't spend that last little bit, then you're wasting, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars on bad marketing. You could potentially like shutter the company, like lose employees. It's really a shitty situation, unfortunately.
And I'm curious from a business side, and we're going to talk about the game, I swear to God, but this is so fascinating to me. Yeah. It's so fascinating to me. You know, you see companies, we won't name names, but you know, it's like, oh, we're gonna bring in the former CEO of Pepsi to run the company. And it's like, that doesn't seem like a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds good to your board and your shareholders, and I think that is like that. I think there's multiple things that are compounding the quality of games as they come out and why they need to hit ship dates. Because, you know, Mikey and I have both worked at multiple studios that were publicly traded, publicly owned. And a lot of the decisions the CEO or the board makes at those companies is based around quarterlies. And like every business, you have to show quarterly growth or the CEO starts getting a little uncomfortable in his seat. So the more people you have on your board, more shareholders you have, more people you answer to, the monetary part of it becomes more important. So if you're going to forecast a Q3 that has your big launch in it, and then the team tells you it's not going to be ready till Q4, what do? Like, you don't have anything else in your back pocket to show the shareholders any kind of growth. So you force it out the door, and like, we'll patch it when it comes out. We'll patch it. We'll make it better. I need that money in Q3 to make my quarter. And if I don't ship it in Q3, I'm in trouble. So that's why we're going to do it. And I know that sounds simplistic. And it's like, oh, is that really what's going on? I honestly think that is really what is driving a lot of this.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, they don't have the ability, they don't have the right people on game teams. And I've seen it on multiple teams in well-established franchises. I worked at EA Sports for 5 years. Like, I've seen it happen on any degree of success where if you're not checking, if the right people aren't checking in with the game's progress as it's going along, everybody's surprised when it isn't good.
Right.
It's like, oh, we're 2 months out from shipping and it's not ready. If you surface it then as a problem, you have a lot less options.
Yeah.
But if you surface it 6 months out or 7 months out, then you can move all your marketing commitments. You can move all your brand commitments. You can move all the stuff that Mikey was talking about, where it's like, this is what's driving them to push the game out. You can move all that if you're up to speed enough and accept reality, because that's really what the executives have the most problem with. Somebody like Mikey or whatever, like our design director, or somebody will come to the executive and say, like, this isn't good. It's not going to be good. There's no way we could be good in 6 months. And they're like, I don't care. It has to be done. And they don't even look at the game, or they look at the game. They can't understand that it's how far off it is. And they kick the can down the road. Let's check in 2 more months and see where it's at. Well, in 2 more months, we have less options. Like, we can't outsource as much. We can't hire because we're 4 months away from shipping. We're not going to ramp people up. So there's like all these business decisions that are made off of one person sticking their head in the ground and not accepting that the game isn't where it needed to be 6 months before it was going to ship.
Damn, that's
fucked up, man.
Fucked up.
We can go down that rabbit hole, man. I feel like there's a lot there that we can unpack.
There's definitely a lot there, yeah.
So speaking, from a game studio perspective, I'm curious because Squanch Games has done obviously console gaming and that there's some work into VR and cloud gaming and all these things. So how do you guys balance the creative freedom that you're trying to have that we talk about but then also that the technical limitations of developing games for a console, mobile device, VR, cloud, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we try to be agnostic of the tech and try to think of just like what is the design we want to do, what's the goal. At a certain point, you have to accept that there's limitations on whatever platform you're coming out on, and so something like VR, you kind of have to figure out the style in a way that's lower fidelity and lean into that early on. But like going forward, we're mostly just focusing on triple I game development, which for people who don't know, it's sort of like there's like triple A development, which is like your Call of Duties, Halo, whatever the big games. Those are triple A, and so then we have with indie companies that aren't really owned by anybody; they're just doing their own thing. There's a really high quality bar that they try to reach, and so our goal is always to kind of stay in that triple I space. So that being said, we know we're going to be wanting to like push graphics, push gameplay, all that stuff. So that tends to push us in a certain direction away from VR. But at the end of the day, the design of the game is what's driving everything as opposed to the tech. And I think that's what allowed us to make High on Life so much better than our previous games that were VR only, which were also awesome. Just High on Life let us really do what we wanted to do.
Yeah, and we're always like in every generation of consoles and PC gaming, we're always limited by our tech. We're never like, oh, we don't know how to take advantage of this tech. It's always like, yeah, this is great. Now we have a bit more RAM and we have video cards that can handle a bit more. Multi-threading was big when it came out. Like there was all kinds of stuff that came out, but it was like we were just removing roadblocks because I think the game makers the creatives in game making don't have a ceiling on their creativity. Like we could brainstorm with a group of designers from any studio right now, and they could come up with a game design that couldn't be made on the current hardware and couldn't be made on the current tech that you would love to play probably. So it's largely like we take advantage of what our restrictions are and try to find ways around. Like ray tracing is really big right now. Like the key like oh, NVIDIA's ray tracing, blah blah blah. We like rendering engineers for decades have been figuring out how to do the same thing ray tracing does without using ray tracing. And right now, ray tracing's at its infancy basically, and it's just not as efficient as all the other hacks that we figured out before now. So it's like we'll find a way. Nature finds a way to make a cool video game, but it's largely the tech is limiting us almost all the time.
Gotcha. Now, speaking on that, we're talking on tech. How do you guys keep up with obviously the trends, the innovations of the game industry, and then I don't know, like just where's that balance? Where's that line, right? Of where we're going to push it and we're going to try experimental stuff or keep it safe and whatnot.
I think it's different project to project. Like we're all gamers and we all play games. We talk about games and we pick it apart where we can. And the part of any creative process is stealing from the best. So if you find something that's really good in another game, we're going to steal it, or at least the basic idea of it. So we're always like kind of plugged into that ecosphere of what other games are doing as we're going through. Shit, I forgot the question.
the industry, keeping up with the trends and cutting edge. And
I'm getting old. I start talking and then I forget what I was talking about. But I think there's a definite balance between trends and good designs or good features. Like for a long time, mobile gaming was the gachapon boxes, the random loot boxes, stuff like that. When loot boxes first came into existence, they were the big trend. Everybody was putting some kind of loot boxes or microtrans into their game because it just doubled your revenue possibilities. And now they're some countries have outlawed them because they're considered gambling. Some a lot of players find it distasteful. It always feels like a money grab. So I think when we are looking at trends in gaming, we're looking at trends and features that other games are working on. It always comes back to our personal take on it. Like, do we think this is yucky? Do we think this is like scummy? Do we think this is cool? As a player, would I want this in another game, or is it just a flash in the pan trend that nobody's going to care about after this? Or is it like something that they did exceptionally well that we wouldn't be able to do as well, so don't even try? Like, unless you're going to put all your apples into one bushel, it's like, don't try to out storytell Telltale. Don't try to open world Bethesda.
Right.
Like, you have to make what you're good at and what you like to play that you can execute on well, and not just chase a trend that happens to be popular right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think in terms of like the more technical side of it, everybody that works here, like it's really hard to get into the industry. So people that are doing this work are really dedicated to the work that they're doing. And like I said before, people are constantly unsatisfied and wanting to grow. So they're always like chomping at the bit to try new tech. So a lot of times, if something's not on my radar, somebody else is already really passionate about it and is already trying to figure out like how to unwind what they're doing to make that tech work, and figuring out like, what if we tried this and what if we tried that? It's sort of a unique thing that I feel like the tech industry has, where people are super passionate about researching stuff, in their personal time. And it's really what drives, what's allowed us to stay competitive. And even with some AAA games, I think we're still staying competitive. And that comes down to just people at the studio being super passionate about learning and about like current tech trends and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. Now I'm curious how, and I want to say, I gotta think about this. Outside of dollars and cents, I mean, how do you guys measure success, right? How do you say the impact of this title, was good? Like, is it the feedback? Is it the reactions? Is it the critics? How do you measure that success internally?
I don't want to get in trouble here. User sentiment is probably the top of the list. I've never been a big fan of critics, and I think most creatives in any field, whether it's video games or movies or whatever, don't like critics because they're just one person's opinion that sways a bunch of other people's opinion. And a lot of times in our industry, they'll match up reviewers that don't even play that genre of game. It's like, oh, we're going to match this person up that plays fucking Animal Crossing to play a first-person military shooter. It's like, oh, they're probably not going to like it. Like it's like that's not a game they would choose to play. So for us, like, it's less about Metacritic, or for me at least, it's less about Metacritic and more about number of players and player sentiment. Like, we're overwhelmingly positive on Steam. We're, I think, 4.8 out of 5 on Game Pass. Like, the players coming out, leaving reviews, talking about how they love it, even like complaining about stuff. Like, if they're engaged, and like the biggest complaint we had with the DLC was there wasn't enough of it. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, you liked it, you just didn't. There wasn't like more than 4 or 5 hours. You wanted more. Okay, cool. Like, that's a good problem to have. So I think it is very anecdotal. We have social and marketing folks that kind of pull all that together for us and give us kind of feedback on how the reception's been in user comments and user ratings. And it's all about the users, man. Like, that's all the only metric that I really care about, because at the end of the day, they're going to sell the game better than any review. They're going to be loyal to you, and like, they're going to be the ones that are on internet forums being your evangelists to buy the new DLC or buy the sequel when it comes out. And like, they're the ones that are going to be with you for years and follow you around and follow the people on your team's careers, and like, they're the supporters, and that's what matters the most is getting that audience. And that was why it was a big part of why we wanted to ship the game on Game Pass, is so we could get it in front of a lot of people. We wanted to get it in front of as many people as we could, because we knew that the humor that we have in the game is divisive. It's, you love it or you hate it. And like, we either got a 5-star review or a 1-star review, because there was nobody in the middle. So to build like a big audience that was loyal to you, you have to show it to as many people as you can, because you know that like, oh well, if 6 million people play it, probably 1 million of them aren't going to like the humor, but 5 million will, and like those are the ones that I want. You know, we latch onto them. They build your audience, and they, you know, I think as we look to what's coming next at a Squanch, we want to involve the players more in that. We want to directly communicate with them and stuff like this, like podcasts and Twitch streams and stuff like that. So I think satisfying the players, as long as they keep thinking we're funny, as long as they keep enjoying the game and leaving good comments and telling their friends about it, then that's all that matters to me.
What about you, Mikey? Success?
Yeah,
what does it mean for you?
think that's pretty close to how I feel about it too. You know, like I think, and again, not to besmirch reviewers or whatever. I just think that they're not as on the pulse with things that aren't in the AAA space as the players seem to be. Like if you compare some of the critic scores that we got, you know, they range from like a 0 to like a 10 out of 10, right? And it's really hard to please everybody. And so you look for that aggregate number of like, you know, a bigger sample size. You go on Steam and you see, okay, it's overwhelmingly positive. Like maybe 1 or 2 people didn't like it. Maybe they were the reviewers of the game. Who knows? You know, and you just don't really think about people that don't like it because you're not making a game for them. Like not everybody has to like everything. So for me, the metric of success is like even outside of reviews, like if I'm on Instagram or Reddit or TikTok or whatever, if I see a video about what I'm working on, I'm like, oh shit, all right, we made it. Like it's out there in the world. And I think that was a big thing for High on Life, was seeing how it just blew up on like all these different social media platforms. And that really was a sign to me that we really hit on something and that we had a lot of success. And of course, you know, getting all the numbers from Microsoft on how successful we actually were was a huge surprise and made me really happy. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, for my own like personal sense of satisfaction, it's like, even if one person really loves the game, like that's enough to make me happy. And luckily so far I've been on a lot of games where that's, you know, there's been more than one person that liked it. And that's pretty satisfying to me. And then additionally, if my kids come home from school and they're like, oh, people at school were talking about the game, I'm like, fuck yeah, like that's it, we did it, you know? So it's definitely more personal than like numbers.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, to get back to what's wrong with the industry, because, you know, I'm going to stand on my soapbox as often as I can, shake my fist at the sky. I think that like the executives at big studios and small studios, they're starting to move away from it a bit now, but we've always been shackled to Metacritic. We've always like, it used to be like, I did some work on the publishing side at Bethesda too. We would put in like Metacritic goals in the contracts with developers. Like you would like, if you hit this goal, then you get this bonus, or and they gauge everything around the success of a game is what a Metacritic does. I'm like, you know, Metacritic is like maybe 50 people that played the game. And if you don't, the decisions that you make with Metacritic being your measurement of success, the decisions you make along the way to get there are weak. They're milk toast to me. Like we have to be appealing to everybody. We have to be inclusive to everything. We have to cast the widest net that we can, because that will result in the most amount of revenue. Whereas we're like, we like this game, we like this humor, we're going to make this, and hopefully a bunch of other people like it too. And we're not gonna water it down. We're not going to change decisions along the way based on what we think the critics will like. Like we forecasted what some of the critics were going to rate us before we even got done. We're like, oh, this outlet is definitely not going to like us, and this outlet is definitely not going to like because they're too far leaning this way or too far leaning that way, or they're on this bandwagon or whatever. It's like they're not going to like a dick joke. They're not going to like an alien that sells semen in the fucking town square. Like they're going to rag on us about this, right? And we were right. Like they didn't like it, but when you get like, if it's a huge outlet, everything is weighted in Metacritic. So if a huge outlet, somebody that doesn't like dick jokes gives you a 3. They're weighted, their Metacritic is weighted, so it brings all the scores down in your Metacritic, the overall score. So it's not an actual gauge of success. It's not even a gauge of popularity. It's a gauge of whether or not you could satisfy the 50 people that were going to review your games from these different outlets. And when you make decisions based on that, I don't think that you're like trying to make a good game anymore. You're just trying to make a successful game.
Yeah, you're not gonna move the needle forward in the industry. You're not gonna challenge the status quo. You're not gonna innovate if you're just trying to please. If you're trying to chase what was successful yesterday, we're gonna be stuck there. We're already running short on time, and this is so fascinating. You guys are awesome. How do you like? This is obviously. I mean, Squanch Games has. In its catalog has very unique games, very the stylistic choices, the visuals are very their own, I guess is the best way to put it. Then the lean towards humor and comedy in a day and age where everything's, super gritty and dark and post-apocalyptic and live action and all this and all that. How do you balance this tone, this humor, this look, while also focusing on gameplay, right? It has to be fun to play. Where do you guys fall on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so for High on Life, I was art director, but also I shared creative direction responsibilities with our design director. And between the two of us, our sensibilities are different. And so he's really, really good at identifying like tight gameplay loops and like here's why this doesn't feel good. Here's why that doesn't feel good. So he really has his finger on the pulse of the gameplay side of things. And then I'm more on the other side where it's more big picture, like, and that's where a lot of the weirdness of the game really comes from, is like just my weird sensibilities when it comes to art and humor. And obviously I'm really passionate about making good gameplay too, but at the end of the day, like nobody's perfect at both things. And so it's really good that we have each other to really lean on. To make sure, like, I'm always going to make sure shit's weird and funny and like arcadey, and he's always going to make sure it all makes sense under the hood and feels tight to other gamers. It's a really good marriage, I guess, is how I would describe it. But it's worked out really well for us in the past. It's a lot of weird shit that's actually fun to play.
Yeah. And we do have different sub teams inside the team. Like we have people that are focused on combat, engineers, designers that are focused on combat and traversal and those types of things. So it really is about setting your intent early on and kind of sticking to it. Like we decided early on that we wanted to be colorful because it stood out. We wanted to be, animated kind of a little bit, but I think the comparison, what you used early on, Mikey, where it was like Jim Henson meets Blade Runner. Like Jim Henson meets Blade Runner was kind of our first elevator pitch kind of visual on what the game was going to be about. But it was just as important to us that the gunplay and that the shooter part of it was solid. Like we want to make a good shooter that's funny and colorful. And if you take that as your marching orders and you stick to it the whole time and don't sacrifice, like, it would be more cartoony if mortars launched like this, and it would be more arcadey if it did. Like, well, we don't want it to be that arcadey. We want it to be somewhat realistic, and we, for all those little micro adjustments along the way, as long as you have the right goal at the end, you can have people working on the same game with majorly diverse goals. One's to make it like as pretty or as animated or as funny as possible. The other one's like, I want to be able to mow down motherfuckers with this gun, or I want the dialogue to just be rip into the player here, or just to be super flowery. And like this whole interaction with the moplets, like, oh, they're so cute, but it's so sad at the same time. And like, I want you to have torn emotions. So you have writers that work on the emotional part of it. We have designers that work on the combat part of it. We have environment artists that work on the look of it, and animators that are pulling it all together and making it look like it's a real thing happening. There's so many different ways that we feed into those different sub goals, but it really is like what Mikey and Eric and Nick and the team set as like, this is the game we're making. And that's kind of why we're excited about moving forward from High on Life, because now we actually know what the franchise is about. Like we didn't know anything 3 years ago. Like we're trying to figure it all out. And it's like, okay, well, we know how realistic our combat's going to be. Like we We know, like, is it going to be a bullet hell game or is it going to be like a super semi combat simulation? Like, we know where we fall in that ladder. Is it like, what are we going to have flight in the game or just like a limited jetpack? Like, we know where our height restrictions are in the game now because we figured that all out. So there's like so many things that we figured out that this was what makes a high on life game that we don't have to figure out again. So it allows us to like push it even further.
And how early? Because one thing that I really enjoy about the game is that we'll call it like that Metroid, Castlevania,
Yeah.
backtracking, and you need to unlock this to get to that area, and
Yeah.
now I have that, and like for me as a gamer, I get to appreciate a level design when I get to tackle it from a different angle. Right? It's the same. It hasn't changed
Right.
in any way. But like, I didn't see this area, and I didn't see, and now I'm looking down at the map versus it changes the way you feel the game. How early in the process were you like, well, we want that kind of element versus maybe A to B every level?
Day one, wasn't it? Like,
Day one,
yeah.
Yeah, that was like Metroidvanias are like an obsession of mine, and a lot of the people at the studio feel the same way. Like they just love exactly what you described, like recursion in levels and seeing things from a different angle and going, "Holy shit! I can't believe I missed this whole thing the last time I just walked through here." Like that's the kind of gameplay I absolutely love, and so. Pretty early on, aside from the whole like, what if Jim Henson made Blade Runner, which really describes like the vibe of the feel of the game. The other side of it was the goal was to make a funny Metroid Prime basically, and that was sort of like the tent pole we set up for the team to follow, and so we kind of whittled it down because of scope, and then eventually we were like, no, we need to add it back in, and so we kept like expanding. If we had spent another year on the game, it would have been even more intricate and more honeycomb level design, and like that's just what we love, and I think
You know what I mean about no artist wouldn't ever ship the game.
exactly, yeah. Without Fridley, High Life would not be out, I'm sure. Yeah. But yeah, no, I think that's just part of our DNA here is like hiding little puzzles and stuff and hiding little areas, and that's as much a part of any of the things that we do as the humor is or the visual.
Yeah, and you can see it. Like, we're all gamers here, like hardcore game, like play games all the time, and you can see it in the jokes that we pull off, like the intricate stuff that Mikey's talking about, and like, by the way, we love hearing shit like this too. It's like somebody else understood the Metroid. Like, it's like, oh yeah, this is great. Like that's how we determine whether or not it was successful. Like, did people get our intention in a sense like you did? But like, we have tons of little Easter eggs and little things to find. Like, we put a whole, I don't know how many lines of dialogue are in there for if you try to speed run the game.
Right.
Like, you take shortcuts and try to speed run it, or like you try to shoot civilians or whatever. Like, there's always something. Like, I wonder if they figured out, like, if you just sit there for too long and don't do anything, we'll talk shit to you, like old Earthworm Jim type of stuff. Like it's that we're constantly pulling stuff out of our collective gaming experience. Like, hey, remember when fucking Earthworm Jim did this? And remember when Outlast did this? And like, could we do something like that, but it fits in our game? And so if you play games for a while, you get to experience a little bit of indirect nostalgia. And if you haven't played games in a while, you think we're fucking brilliant because we came up with something that was already awesome.
Yeah, I think back to like Conker's Bad Fur Day and some of that cutting dialogue and things like that. Speaking of Easter eggs and things like that, is there anything that you maybe put in there that you haven't really seen people talk about, or something that like, it's just one of those things. Let's go viral right here, right now. What's something people should go back and look for in either the base game or the DLC that maybe you didn't see enough people talk about?
Honestly, at this point, like, I thought that would exist because we really did bury so much in there, like even behind walls and stuff that there's no way you could see unless you like hack the game and poke around. And we've had such passionate fans that they were finding stuff in the game that even I didn't know existed, like because we have a big team of people that are all putting their stuff in, and we very much encourage people, like, if you love this thing, put it in and we'll talk about it, right? And so there was stuff that got in that I didn't even realize got in, and people are finding it, and I'm just like, how the fuck? Like somebody did like a no clip. I don't know if you're familiar with those videos where they like load up a game and they poke through walls and stuff and look at all the behind the scenes. So I did that of the game and found tons and tons of little secrets that we had hidden in there. So at this point, I feel like when you have the player base that we've had, it's almost impossible to hide.
Yeah, they'll find
anything at this point, which is really cool problem to have. We're just gonna have to try even harder to hide stuff going forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun. You know, I think I found stuff definitely after the game shipped that I didn't know was in there. It's like, oh, okay, cool. It's like, oh, a designer like made me go all the way down this intricate path, and then at the end, it's just somebody spray painted "fuck you" on the wall. I'm like, It's like, yeah, it's funny, but like, so there's tons of that stuff in there. But the players are so. I mean, you got people that are on Reddit talk about how they've played it 10 times and they've gone through this way and tried that. I mean, once they like your content, they really just play the shit out of it. So I don't think there's probably some designers on the team right now that can pull an example of something that hasn't been found yet, but I don't know of any that haven't been found yet either.
Yeah, all the things I can think of, I'm like, oh wait, I saw that in the stream. Oh wait, someone talked to me about that. Like, there's some stuff that was deep in there that people found.
I mean, I think that's a testament to how playable the game is, how passionate the fan base of it is. Because when you're like, yeah, there's like 100 things in there no one's found. Nobody played it. Nobody else cared.
That's a real good point.
I'm definitely very happy that people found the shit they found and posted about it and talked about it. And like, we had so many good conversations around like every little piece of the game. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's so great to see them experience it the same way we did when we first did it. Because like we do something called show and tell on Fridays here at the studio where people can just show off stuff they worked on that week, videos, screenshots, whatever it is. It's mostly just us laughing at fucking jokes, right? Or like laughing at an absurd design of a character or like an absurd design of a gun or like a specific VO that was recorded that week. And we just got to experience like during the whole years of making it, laughing at all this stuff that we thought were hilarious. And now we get to see it go out in the world and like people on Twitch and YouTube and everything making videos and like experiencing it for the first time. It's like, oh, look, if you walk away from this moplet, he keeps telling you to come back. He's like the ripped in half mop. Like that, he was in early. Like I think he might have been in the first playable or the vertical slice. Like
he was. Yeah, he used to be a little merc, one of the enemies that we fight. And the original.
But we've been laughing at that joke for years. And like then we got to see it come out and everybody's like loved it just as much as we did. We're like, hell yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Usually first idea is the best idea with that stuff. And it's really challenging not to get bored with stuff when it comes to comedy. But typically, like if you change something, it's never as good as it was when you first had the idea. And so we try pretty hard to hold on to stuff, and we definitely throw stuff out that sucks all the time. But we try to hold on to the ones that really made us laugh.
Sure. As we're winding down here, obviously the game's been a big hit. Everyone I know that's played it, I've never heard a bad thing about it, other than I want more. Right? That's always the key thing.
I'll take it.
We just had High on Knife. Was it October? Just released this past October. What does the future look like? Can we expect more development for this game, or are we shifting gears and now looking at the future of the franchise?
That'll be it for this game. So we're done development for High on Life. We did the one DLC. That's pretty much where that is where we're ending High on Life. So we're working on a couple other things right now that we're not ready to announce, obviously. Sure. But it's expect more of the absurdity that you saw in High on Life from us in the future, and probably even more over the top than we were previously. Because now, like, this was kind of like a let's see where the line is type of thing. It's like, can we put Applebee's in the game and not license it? Like, what'll happen? So we think this is covered in parody law. Okay, cool. But like, we think we can get away with this. We think we get, and like, turns out people like that stuff. So it's like, oh, okay. Now it's almost like all the people that laughed along with us are encouraging us to push it even further. So I think that's what's in store for us, is more of the same and even better.
Yeah. A really cool benefit of us coming out and being as visible as we were is we've gotten a lot of people that are dying to work here that have tons and tons of good experience, super talented. So our team now is just ridiculous. Like we've got all these super senior people that are amazing, and the quality of everything that we're doing, like you could even see it in the DLC compared to the base game. Like where we were with the base game was great, but the team, for a year at least, we were developing with probably like 10, 15 people. And then towards the end, we brought like 50 people on, and it was like growing pains. And so where we ended up was like, I'm very proud of where we ended up, but starting with where we ended up now and with some of the newer people we're hiring, like our future is like everything that we did well on High on Life, I feel like we're going to be dialing up even more. And then what we're doing next is just people. I think people are going to be really, really pleasantly surprised with where we're taking.
Yeah, we're blowing milestones out of the water. Really, wow, man, we're really blowing through these milestones to the point where we have to look at what we're shipping and like what our original plans were. It's like, oh wow, if we can move this quickly to this level of quality with these level of people, and we don't recruit very often, and we don't have a lot of openings, but when we do, I think it is a strength that we're a fully remote studio because we can recruit from anywhere. Like we got 14 states and 3 countries, I think, that we have people in, and we're only 70 people. So like we go for whoever is the best applicant, not necessarily where they are, because they don't have to relocate anywhere. They don't have to. We get a lot better applicants because, like, if you want to work for EA Sports, you don't want to live in Orlando, then you can't work at EA Sports, right? So if you don't want to live in California because it's so fucking expensive, and you used to not be able to work at like a lot of studios. Like a lot of studios were in California, but now it's like we're able, with the kind of work from home setup and the remote setup for everyone, we're able to recruit the best people, no matter where they are. Yeah, which is awesome. Like went a lot to our bottom line. Like we're just getting better work out of folks that, and you really need it too, because we learned over the pandemic and over the adjusting to remote work that we're not really good at mentoring junior folks when we're talking over video. It's hard to grow junior people at our fully remote studio. So we've gone more in the vein of experience and people that can self-manage and like, you could tell them, this is your thing, go make it fucking great, and they will go make it great. And that's all you have to. Like, we check in with them, give them feedback, and obviously move it along. But like that's such a superpower that I think the studio has, that we're all a bunch of independent workers that come together for the same goal, and everybody's super talented. So I'm really excited about the next one. Really excited about the next one, and what we're going to be able to do with it.
Okay. Yeah, High on Life was like my dream game, and I thought I'll never top that. And now what we're working on now, somehow I'm even more excited. Like, I don't know, are we just going to keep fucking doing this until my head explodes?
That's the goal. That's the goal. Can we get like a 2-word, 3-word, super vague tease about maybe what the future is? Something that doesn't give it away, but I need something. I need something here. What do you got?
Fans will be happy. That's all. That's
fans will be happy.
Say. Wait.
I know I went too far, Mikey. I'm skirting the line.
We'll edit that out. We'll edit it out. It's fine. I'll give you a take 2 at this. Check this out. We're gonna. Thank God we're not live, right? So I'm gonna. Is there anything that you want to tease about what's working on in the future? Any 1 or 2 word, fun, exciting. People will be happy.
Something insane and fun, and fans of Squanch will be fucking thrilled
and funny. Like we're comedy is always going to be our thing, so we're always going to come back to comedy. There's always going to be good joke writing, good characters, lots of fun stuff, and then a solid shooter or whatever the other systems are around it. But our main goal is always to make something funny and different. Yeah. So that's what to expect in the future. Is more funny, different stuff from us.
I don't know why bigger, badder, uncut. Like that jumps into my mind.
We covered the uncut part with his hands in the first game.
Yes,
we're gonna ship the next one. Just call it Game of the Year.
Yeah.
Squanch's Game of the Year.
Game of the Year.
I love it.
Bigger, better, the Game of the Year, right out of the box.
Yes, right. Game of the Year edition. That's the first one's got to come out. Is Game of the Year edition.
It's funny enough, like we are going to ship a physical copy next year.
Oh wow!
And we are going to call it Game of the Year edition.
And there was a lot of people called it Game of the Year, so it counts.
A lot of people said it was their Game of the Year, so that's all we're doing is taking that and putting it on the box.
It's a quote. You got to put it in quotations. Game of the Year.
Game of the Year.
My mom said.
Zach.
Our moms approved. Are you guys on social media? Where can people follow you? Where can people stay up to date on what's going on?
They can follow us just at Squanch Games and at High on Life. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and we even started on Threads recently. So I don't think we've done much on there yet, but that's the studio stuff. Like my personal stuff, I'm not going to give that out.
No, my personal stuff, I do show like stuff from the game. Typically, once we hit a certain point where something is announced or we do a trailer or whatever, I'll post stuff from that on like behind the scenes kind of stuff on my personal Instagram. So people can just, if they're interested in that, it's just Mikey.Spano on Instagram. And there's a bunch of High on Life stuff on there if people are curious.
Outstanding. Well, I mean, there's so much we didn't cover. I had questions about merch and about like other like could it be a comic book? Could it be a podcast? All these different things.
Announcements. It's funny. Like you're just rattling off our future here. Like there are. We did just announce, or IGN just did announce a scripted podcast on High on Life. So there'll be a scripted podcast in the future there. We are actively working on an art book and a comic series with Titan. So that's to be in the near future. So
there's a reason I'm an industry insider, man. I got to know these
like
things.
Nostradamus.
We've got a bunch of great merch on the IGN store too, and then we'll have some more merch in like physical locations and stuff. So there's definitely stuff out there. If you're a fan and you want it, please go buy it. Like I don't care if you somehow steal it. Just wear the fucking thing and feel like I made it.
Oh, absolutely. I have the hat that you guys were giving out at the party at the New York Comic Con party. So I'm actually going to, part of this interview is going to be a giveaway to one of the members of the audience. They're going to get that hat, nice. and then a stream code for the game and the DLC and all that. So we want to make people happy. I'll give you guys the last few seconds to say your piece, to say your goodbyes. Promote anything, announce anything, tell people to stay tuned, whatever you have, and then we'll toss it to the end.
Yeah, just stay tuned. Like we're gonna go stealth for a little bit, so stay tuned, hang with us. Like we're gonna stay active. We're gonna try to include the players and all the craziness that we do, look for us. We're gonna be competing with what the hell's the big 2020? GTA 6. So we're gonna crush GTA 6 numbers. I think is the next goal.
That's a goal that we're definitely gonna hit. Yeah. But just fucking stay tuned. Lots of cool weird shit coming. Just in general, I'm really glad that people like the game. I'm glad you had us on.
We're bad at promoting.
Yeah. The game promotes itself. If you're into that kind of shit, just go play it and you'll like it. If you're not, go play it and fucking.
It's free on Game Pass still, so like you can go play it on Game Pass, and if you like it, throw us a few bucks. That'd be great.
Yeah, buy the DLC if you got the fucking game for free.
Yeah.
Please help
you guys got like a Venmo? People can Venmo you the money, or how do you?
I don't dare give it out. I'll get all these requests.
You guys have like a Kickstarter going for the next one? I'm just out of curiosity, just gonna self-publish it or whatever.
No, Kickstarter for our fucking Gatlian fleshlights.
Jesus.
Yes, I'm on board. I want to be the first subscribers, so I'm on board.
I want them so bad.
We do have kind of a secret thing going on now with a cannabis company. So we
Okay.
will be having like eventually we're going to have a High on Life line of cannabis products in states where it's legal. So
outstanding. I want to be the first to get high on life. You know what I'm saying? You guys are awesome. Hopefully you had a good time, and when the next big thing is ready to go, man, we want to have you guys back and delve all the way inside. I want to be all the way inside you guys. Okay.
Get in line.
sweet. All right.
Awesome. Thank you guys. So this has been CEO Mike Fridley and CCO. I want to make sure I got it. Mikey Spano. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the show. And we look forward to laughing with you guys and enjoying your work for many years to come. So thank you guys for coming on.
Thanks to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Catch you later.
All right, guys.